FanDuel's released some of the future totals for college football in 2025. Tennessee's got one of the highest numbers in the Southeastern Conference, and Tennessee can win 10 games in 2025. I'll tell you how right here on a Friday, Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, good Friday morning, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Vols. I'm your host, Cain. So glad to have you guys along for the ride here today and making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch each and every single weekday morning. We'll have a bonus show coming up sometime tomorrow, maybe later tomorrow, maybe even early Saturday morning, but it will be a basketball crossover with Zach Blackerby of Locked On Auburn, so you have that to look forward to. A little bonus content later on a Friday or early Saturday morning. But today's episode here on a Friday is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time, where you can download the Game Time app, put in the promo code LOCKEDONCollege, and get $20 off your first purchase. I'm going to tell you how Tennessee's going to win 10 games in 2025 because those totals over at FanDuel came out. And again, it feels like there's such a sour taste in your mouth, and Tennessee just sucks right now. But it's not all doom and gloom, I promise you. I'm going to tell you how Tennessee can win 10 games and some of those other future totals, such as Heisman, top 10 quarterbacks in college football, way too early top 25s, all that and more here in segment number one. And then kind of parlay that into looking at our positions. The position rooms entering spring practice got two more positions left. One is quarterbacks, the other specialist. We will look at the quarterbacks here today, and then I'll get you set for Tennessee and Auburn, give you an early look at the Auburn Tigers. All that and more right here on a Friday, Locked On Vols. Okay, so futures totals came out according to FanDuel Sportsbook, and Tennessee given a 9.5, that total for the 2025 football season. So numbers 9.5. So FanDuel believes Tennessee's going to either win 10 games or win 9 games. And the juice, in case you're interested, minus 130 to finish under 9.5, plus 102 to finish over. So the juice tells you 9 wins, but still that total is right at 9.5. And again, that's kind of where I expected it to be. Somebody asked me on the Monday night chat a couple of days ago, or asked the question, where do you think Tennessee's total number will be? I'd say about 9.5. And I understand there's several questions to be answered. I get it. Offensive line, what's going on there? Will Tennessee finish with Sam Pendleton in the transfer portal? If so, who plays where? Center, right tackle, how does David Sanders relate in this conversation? All that and more. Wide receivers. I mean, there's questions. There's questions for every football team. I'm not trying to say that there's not. But I think with what Tennessee returns on the defensive line, what Tennessee returns at experience at linebacker, got to take a step there. What Tennessee returns experience in the secondary, and you're going to get Jamal McCoy back at some point. Parlay that into a good group of running backs that I like, tight ends that I like. I think I've already told you yesterday's show, and we'll talk more about this here in a moment, but I think Nico's going to take a huge step. And then we'll just see what those wide receivers look like, who plays where in the offensive line. I know those are big ifs, but I think Tennessee has got a lot to look forward to. And so I think Tennessee, looking at that total at 9.5, that's about right. Now, when you compare it to FanDuel didn't release every football team, just some of the notables from the Southeastern Conference, some of the better teams in the country, and then, of course, Colorado, because everybody's got that, prime time effect right now. Tennessee's got one of the highest totals that were given out by FanDuel here in the early odds. Tennessee's at 9.5. Texas is at 9.5. Georgia is at 9.5. So Tennessee, Texas, and Georgia all at 9.5, okay? Alabama, 8.5. LSU, 8.5. Florida, which we, again, put things into perspective. We had a show, a couple of weeks ago about who's got more offseason or who's got more momentum heading into 2025, heading into the offseason. Is it Tennessee or is it Florida? Because Florida, went on that run, winning 5 of the last 6 games. DJ Lagway, Jaden Baugh, all that and more. That's all great. Or is it Tennessee that went to the college football playoffs but, lost 2 of its last 4 games in humiliating fashion to Georgia and Ohio State? The answer is still Tennessee. And these win totals reflect that, okay? The win totals reflect that. Tennessee at 9.5 and Florida at 6.5, which is just wild to me. Just wild. I've got another stat that I want to pull up here that I thought was very, very interesting. This is from resident SEC squad. I'm not going to call him an expert because he's not. Chris Marler, who's also the host of Locked On South Carolina. He put a graphic together. This is from the Action Network, the totals, where they give Georgia and Texas 10.5, and they have Tennessee, Ole Miss, LSU, Missouri, and Alabama all at 9.5. So a little bit different from the Action Network to what FanDuel's released so far. But this is what Chris Marler had to say, in relation to the totals released by Action Network. 7 of the 8 teams that Vegas listed at 8.5 or higher finished with, 0.5 wins of that total, essentially saying that they nailed it. The other 8 that finished at 7.5 or lower, only one team was within 0.5 wins, a half a win away, and that was Arkansas that finished this past season with, 7 wins, whatever it was. So nonetheless, this is the time where we're releasing way too early projections and top 25s and all that and more, but I find it kind of interesting. It is not just all doom and gloom. There are answers that we got to figure out, and we're going to. But Tennessee, according to FanDuel, one of the highest, projected teams in the Southeastern Conference next year with a win-loss total at 9.5. Now, outside the SEC, Ohio State and Oregon, both from the Big Ten, that total sitting at 10.5. Miami's at 8.5 with Carson Beck coming over from Georgia. Indiana is at 8.5. It was a college football playoff team this year. Clemson, it just missed out on it made the college football playoffs, excuse me. It rattled off a couple of those wins and took down SMU in the ACC championship game to punch a ticket to the college football playoffs. It's sitting at 9.5 as its win total. Again, FanDuel didn't release everything, and I didn't, there's a couple more teams out there than the ones that I've mentioned so far, but I thought those were kind of the highlights. So Tennessee's at 9.5. Would you take over or under? I would take, there's a clear and direct path for Tennessee to win 10 games next year. We've done this exercise before. No Kyle McCord with Syracuse. That's a neutral site field in Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I like Tennessee, even though I think Syracuse is a good team. I think it's going to be a challenge. I like Tennessee to win that game. I like Tennessee to win ETSU. That's 2-0. Say Tennessee drops Georgia at home. It's at home, though. Okay, it's at home, and Georgia's going to be a bit different. Tennessee, kind of, where are you? Where's Jamal McCoy at cornerback and all that? I recognize it's going to be very much work in progress. Tennessee on the offensive line, where you have that right there. But for the sake of this exercise, let's just say Tennessee drops that game, okay? Because it's so early in the season. Georgia, week 3. Say Tennessee loses that game, you're sitting at 2-1. Tennessee wins UAB, that's a win. Tennessee wins on the road at Mississippi State. Tennessee gets revenge at home against Arkansas, that's a win. Tennessee on the road at Alabama, let's hold off for that for a moment. Tennessee wins at Lexington because Tennessee wins at Lexington. Tennessee beats Oklahoma at home, okay? Although I think that's going to be a challenge because I think the offensive line, there's still questions there. John Mateer, quarterback's going to be interesting, all that and more. But we'll say that's a win for now. New Mexico State's a win. Hold off on Florida. Vanderbilt at home's a win. So, again, it goes back to those 2 games that I've talked about, all right? For Tennessee to be back in the college football playoffs. For Tennessee to have SEC championship and college football playoff national championship aspirations, you've got to be better on the road. So the path to 10 wins is also the path to the college football playoffs. It's also the path to Atlanta to represent the SEC, not one half of the SEC, to represent, a fraction of the SEC in the SEC championship game. You've got to win a game on the road. It's either at Alabama or it's at Florida. I think Alabama's coming down a little bit. I don't think Alabama's going to be bad. I don't think Alabama's horrible, but I see Alabama as another 9-3 football team missing the CFP, and Kalen DeBoer is very much on the hot seat. I talked about this with somebody the other day. Tennessee can win that game on the road, and with all due respect, again, playing on the road in Tuscaloosa is not like playing at Georgia. It is not like playing at Florida. It is not like playing at LSU. It is one of the most overrated home venues, in my opinion, in the Southeastern Conference. That's one man's opinion. Right or wrong, that's my opinion. I think Tennessee can win that game. I certainly do. And say Tennessee wins that game and Tennessee drops the game at Florida, that's a late loss. But at 10-2, I think that still should get you in. You need to win that game against Florida in the end because that'll propel you into those final rankings, right? It won't be a late loss. We know the College Football Playoff Committee, really talked about last year, or they showed it's important about not how many you lose, it's when you lose them. Hello, Notre Dame. If you have late losses, that sometimes hurts you. And I think the loss at Georgia or at Florida, second to last week of the regular season, that could hurt Tennessee in a big way. Plus, it has been a house of horrors for Tennessee. So you better win that game against Tuscaloosa. You better win that game, in my opinion, against Florida. If you drop at Tuscaloosa, you got to win. Season's on the line at that point. You got to win at Florida. So, I don't know. We'll obviously pick these games couple of times over the offseason and have a final prediction there entering next season. But Tennessee's path to 10 wins, Tennessee's path to the over at 9.5 at FanDuel, Tennessee's path to the SEC championship game, and Tennessee's path to the college football playoff comes down to 2 games. It's on the road at Alabama, and then on the road at Florida at the end of the season, right before Vanderbilt. Tennessee's got to split that. Tennessee has got to split those two trips in order to be, who it wants to be. All right, I spent a lot more time on that regard. We are going to put the quarterback talk for Nico, the quarterback room talk, the position look ahead in the back burner. We'll get to that next week, but we will talk Nico. We'll talk top 10 quarterbacks. We'll talk way too early top 25s and Heisman odds, all that Heisman odds, all that and more coming up in segment number 2, because I went a little overboard here talking about that total. But FanDuel thinks Tennessee's going to have Tennessee's totals at 9.5, along with Texas and Georgia. How about that? Says a lot about the program that Josh Heupel is bringing back in 2025. All that and more as we come in, and I'll tell you, where's Nico projected in the Heisman odds? It's pretty up there. It's pretty high up there. What does FanDuel think Nico is regarding the top 10 quarterbacks in college football? All that and more coming up next as we continue on a Friday. Locked On Vols. Attending an NFL playoff game was an experience like none other. The energy, the excitement, the connection with the fans is unmatched. It's a lot like the college football playoff game as well. It was just so much fun. I remember the thrill of seeing my favorite team clinch a playoff win live. It's a memory that I'll never forget. I mean, that's obviously wasn't Tennessee this year, but I've seen the Titans do that in the playoffs before. That's been a blast. This year, Game Time makes it easier to create these unforgettable moments with new feature called Game Picks. It filters out all the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats so you can focus on what matters, which is being there. I use Game Time Picks to grab some tickets for a recent basketball game at the Food City Center. It couldn't have been any easier. I found the super deals that gave me an incredible value for my amazing seats, and I could even preview the view of my spot before buying. All-in prices is a game changer. No surprise fees at checkout. Plus, knowing my tickets are backed by the Game Time guarantee gave me a complete peace of mind. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, put in the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create that account. Redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guarantee. What time is it? It is game time. And we continue on this Friday morning edition of Locked On Vols, and we're talking a lot of futures. The regular, or not the regular season, the college football season. Very sad, very sad. It is officially over. So that means we all have all these way too early top 25 polls and these Heisman odds and all that and more, these win totals. And we just talked about Tennessee's 9.5 at FanDuel in segment number 1. I'm going to go over a couple more of these here in segment 2. Heisman odds right here. Look at this, okay? Look at this graphic. This is from FanDuel. And these are the Heisman, the way too early Heisman odds. We got Garrett Nussmeier, quarterback LSU, sitting as the favorite or tied with the favorite with Arch Manning at Texas at plus 850, okay? We've got Cade Klubnik at plus 1,200, okay? We've got Cade Klubnik, of course, at Clemson. Drew Aller, quarterback at Penn State, plus 1,200. Nico Iamaleava tied for the second highest odds at plus 1,200. Of course, Tennessee's quarterback, so he's right there in the top 5 of the Heisman odds early on, according to FanDuel. Jeremiah Smith, Ohio State wide receiver, is also there with Nico and Aller and Klubnik at plus 1,200. South Carolina quarterback Lenore Sellers at plus 1,800, along with Julian Sayin, who's the projected starting quarterback for the Ohio State Buckeyes. Carson Beck, going from Georgia to Miami. He is along with Dante Moore, who's now the quarterback at Oregon, at plus 2,000. John Mateer, Washington, Oklahoma quarterback, plus 2,500, along with DJ Lagway of Florida. They're at 2,500. Kevin Jennings of SMU is at plus 3,000. Austin Simmons, new starting quarterback at Ole Miss, plus 3,300, along with Miller Moss of Louisville, Gunnar Stockton of Georgia. And then we got Ryan Williams at plus 3,500, wide receiver at Alabama. Marcel Reed, quarterback from the mid-state here in Tennessee, but A&M, plus 4,000. Jalen Daniel, of Kansas, plus 4,500, along with Steve Angeli, plus 4,500 for Notre Dame. So, again, you got Nico Iamaleava, that's among, according to the Heisman odds, one of the top 5 players in contention. I like Nussmeier. If you listen to the SEC squad yesterday, I was kind of going to bat for Garrett Nussmeier. I'm not an LSU fan. It's not like I'm a Garrett Nussmeier apologist, but I think he's a pretty good player. More on that here in a moment, but I have no issue with him being towards the top. I at this point in their careers, and this is no disrespect, I think the world of Nico. I think that he's going to be a pretty good player. I think that he took massive steps last year. But Nico and Arch being up here this high is only due to their names. That's it. It's the Nico Iamaleava, the Arch Manning effect. It's name recognition. That is all the reason why they're up there. Drew Aller, it's probably a bit steep there. Probably a bit steep. Going off stats-wise, I think Cade Klubnik's right where he needs to be. Jeremiah Smith needs to be way up there. He needs to be up there with Nussmeier for sure, in my opinion, because he's the best player in the country. Stats-wise, Norris Sellers probably needs to be up there a little bit as well. And then again, you're getting back into the name game. They're projecting John Mateer to be great. They're projecting Dante Moore to be great. They're projecting Carson Beck to be like he was in 2023. They're projecting Austin Simmons to be really, really good. I think Gunnar Stockton is super mediocre. I don't think he deserves to be on this list. But anyway, Nico Iamaleava was among some of the Heisman favorites, according to the projected odds over at FanDuel and some other books, through the month of October. And at that point in his season, Nico didn't deserve to be on those lists. So again, it's very much a who you know in the name game. Having said all that, FanDuel released its way too early top 10 quarterbacks in college football next season. And I've got some thoughts about this list. FanDuel lists number 1, quarterback in the SEC, Garrett Nussmeier. Number 2, Arch Manning. Number 3, DJ Lagway. Number 4, this is not SEC, this is college football. Number 4, Drew Aller. Number 5 is Nico. Number 6 is Lenore Sellers. 7, Cade Klubnik. 8, Carson Beck. 9, Dylan Raiola. And number 10, Caden Salter, former Tennessee Volunteer great. Okay, where do we start here? Again, I think Drew Aller's a bit up there too much. I think he's a fine player. I think that he was the quarterback of a college football playoff team, which is superb. I don't think that he deserves to be up there with some of these other names on this list. So I think Drew Aller is a bit premature up there. I think DJ Lagway is going to be a stud at Florida. I do. But the fact of the matter is, again, a true freshman, he's going to be so much better. 10 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, didn't throw for many yards. I get it. At times this year, Florida was a crapshoot. I get that. They ended much better than they started. But DJ Lagway being the number 3 quarterback on this list, give me a break. And for that matter, Arch Manning, who again I think is going to be a fine player, much better than I thought he was in the recruiting circles, because I thought truly was just off name recognition. I've actually seen him play and make some plays, and he's got a skill set that is pretty good, and I think he's going to be a fine player. But again, he started 2 games. What, just like Nico last year. Again, I'm not biased here. Just like Nico was last year. Why is Arch so far up this list? It makes no sense to me. So Arch Manning and DJ Lagway need to go way down. Based off stats alone and track record, Lenore Sellers needs to be above Nico. Okay? Cade Klubnik needs to be above Nico. Now, who has the potential to be much, much better? Nico, hands down. And I think Nico's going to take that step this year. I truly do. Because I think Nico, second year in the system, second year starting quarterback, I'm better at my job than I was 2 years ago. Some of you guys think that I'm still pretty bad at my job. That's fair. I think Nico's going to take a huge, huge, huge step in 2025. I do. So, but, based off production and based off track record thus far, Klubnik needs to be above Nico. Sellers needs to be above Nico. Carson Beck off his 2023 season probably needs to be up there. But, of course, 2024 was a down year. Why is Dylan Raiola even on this list? Makes no sense. And then Caden Salter, I think, is a fine player. But why is Caden Salter on this list as well? Overall, entering 2025, I think the quarterback class is not that great. I think the quarterback class, the NFL quarterback class this year is also not that great. But there's still some ballers on that list, and I can't wait to see, how much better Nico gets. I can't wait to see what Arch truly is. I think Nussmeier is the easiest bet, in my opinion, of any of these guys. Because he threw for over 3,000 yards this year. He sat behind 2 really, really good quarterbacks and waited his turn. I mean, I think he's the safest bet, even though I'm not an LSU fan, nor am I a Brian Kelly fan. Who has done less with more than anybody in the country? I'll give you 1 second to respond. It's Brian Kelly, hands down. Goodness gracious. All right, so that was the list of the top 10 quarterbacks on FanDuel. I think... Again, I think this is so typical of a January list because I think that's so out of order, and I think that there's a lot of players that don't need to be on this list, in my opinion. Let's go to one other more. Oh, I guess I haven't even showed this yet. Championship odds. Okay, this is from FanDuel. You have Ohio State at plus 450, Texas at plus 650, Oregon at 650, Georgia at plus 700, Penn State at plus 850, Notre Dame at plus 1,200, Alabama at plus 1,600, Tennessee at plus 1,800. Not really sure why Tennessee's behind Alabama. Clemson along with Tennessee at plus 1,800. LSU at plus 2,000. Ole Miss at plus 2,300. Texas A&M at plus 3,100. Michigan plus 3,500. South Carolina and Miami, Florida. We had to make sure that it was Miami, Florida, not Miami of Ohio. Both at plus 4,000. You have Florida, Auburn at plus 5,000. SMU, Louisville at plus 6,000. And Oklahoma at plus 6,500. I would flip Tennessee and Alabama. I don't know enough about these teams coming back, to be honest with you. I don't know what Notre Dame's got at quarterback. I know about Penn State. I know about Georgia. I know Dante Moore's coming back are going to be the guy at Oregon. I know Arch Time in Texas. I know Julian Sayan's going to be the guy at Ohio State. I know you got Jeremiah Smith. Rumors of Cardinal Tate entering the portal, but he's not done that at the time of this recording, so you're going to be set at wide receiver, plus Brandon Ennis as well. Ohio State's going to reload on offense. I don't know enough about all these teams to necessarily comment, but Tennessee is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th best odds, tied for the 8th best odds. I don't hate that. I think that's probably about right based on what you've lost. I still think LSU's a bit overhyped, but again, I am in on LSU's quarterback this year. I actually am. Finally, the last one I want to show you is the way too early college football top 25 per ESPN. If you're watching on YouTube, you see it in front of you. Of course, this was earlier this week. Tennessee comes in there at number 19. Earlier in the week as well, On 3 posted the way too early top 25, and Tennessee came in at number 13. I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think, was it CBS? Somebody had Tennessee at number 9. I think it's somewhere in the middle. I can see Tennessee being around 13, 14, 15, somewhere around there. Again, these way too early, people that vote on these way too early, order of finishes and predictions and top 25 polls, all you're doing is looking at who you got gone, right? Tennessee, you lose Brew McCoy, you lose Dante Thornton, your 2 most productive, and Squirrel White, your 3 most productive wide receivers from a unit that wasn't very good. Dylan Sampson, All-American tailback, you lose him. You lose 4 starting offensive linemen, led by Remington runner-up Cooper Mays. You lose James Pierce, who's going to be a first-round draft pick on the defensive line. Jermon McCoy, now it's public knowledge he's hurt. So, I get all that. I get all that in terms of, you look at who you've lost. But I'm not going to play this game where I know everything about every other team in front of you. Some of those teams in front of Tennessee. But anyway, just kind of a starting point. I thought it was very, very interesting. But the biggest thing of this week in terms of the early predictions and odds and all that, Tennessee's win total 9.5. There's not mansions in the desert for no reason, okay? Like Vegas knows. And I think that's about right, 9-3 to 10-2 in the regular season. 10-2 gets you in the playoffs. Usually it should. And I'm intrigued to see kind of what this looks like. All right, when we come back, let's get you set for Tennessee and Auburn, give you a little bit of a preview. Tennessee and Auburn, again, we will have a bonus show coming out later on Friday or early Saturday morning to get you set for Tennessee and Auburn, a little crossover with Locked On Auburn and Zach Blackerby. But we're going to get you set for Tennessee and Auburn, give you the stuff you need to know heading into the weekend right here on Locked On Vols. Hey guys, welcome back into your final segment on a Friday at Locked On Vols. I am Eric Cain. Thank you so much for being here and getting us set for the weekend. Your unofficial start to your tailgate here on this weekend. And boy, Tennessee basketball has got a massive game. College game day is going to be on the plains this weekend for number 6 Tennessee at number 1 Auburn, 8:30 Eastern time. It's going to be on ESPN. And a couple weeks ago, this matchup had even more juice, even more anticipation. Arguably two of the best teams in college basketball. Number 1 ranked Tennessee for 6 weeks. Number 2 Auburn continuing to close that gap in the polls every single week. Since 2 weeks ago, Tennessee's dropped 2 games, a 30-point loss on the road at Florida, which was not great. A 1-point loss on the road at Vanderbilt to a less talented team. That was not great. And Auburn hasn't lost any games. In fact, they've won 2 games in the last 2 or they won 3 games in the last 2 weeks, I guess, week and a half. They've ascended to number 1 ranked team in the polls. However, they have lost National Player of the Year candidate, SEC Player of the Year candidate, All-American, and Johni Broome. And that's a huge loss. Huge loss. Johni Broome, 17 points on average, 10 rebounds on average, already 43 block shots this year. He's a guy that's been there a long time. He's played college basketball for a long time. And he's a huge part of what Bruce Pearl and the Auburn Tigers do. So it was reported it's a severe ankle sprain, didn't have to require surgery. He's missed the last 2 weeks. And we'll ask Zach Blackerby on Locked On Auburn all about this injury coming up on the bonus show tomorrow or later today. But it was kind of reported that he missed the next 2 games no matter what, and then like they're not going to rush him back, nor should they. Well, 2 games is up. Auburn, how they fare without him so far, an 88-66 win at home against Mississippi State, okay? And then just getting by Georgia last Saturday on the road, 70-68. They didn't have a midweek game this week. 70-68 on the road at Georgia, just scraping by, but did get the win. So they've been 2-0 without Johni Broome. However, that 2 games is up. So will he return? Will he be a part of the fold for Tennessee versus Auburn? I very much doubt it. We'll ask Zach Blackerby. I'll ask some people down there on the plains what they're thinking about it. But, like, why would you rush him back? Sure, this is a huge game. I recognize that. But, you know, it's also the month of January. You have all of February, and then you have March, which matters the most. So I would be surprised. We'll see if Johni Broome comes back. But still, Auburn's a really, really good basketball team. 17-1, 5-0 in SEC play. The lone loss of the year for the Auburn Tigers, an 84-78 decision on the road at Cameron Indoor in Durham, North Carolina, to Duke, who now sits number 2 right behind Auburn in the AP poll. That was during the ACC SEC Challenge. So that's the only loss on the season for Auburn. 10 straight wins since. Again, I mentioned, Broome leading the way. Of course, he's not been in the lineup the last 2 games. We'll see about his availability on Saturday. 17 points per game, 10 rebounds, already 43 block shots on the year. 6 players average double-figure scoring for Auburn. This is an Auburn offense that is ranked number 1 in the adjusted offensive efficiency rankings, number 1, where Tennessee is ranked number 23. Defensive efficiency rating, Tennessee, of course, is number 3 in the country. Auburn is at number 19. So you're going to have good on good, right? Good on good. Talked about that a lot with, in football matchups, good on good, best on best. Auburn's offense, number 1 in the country. Tennessee's defense, number 3 in the country, which has spent time being the number 1 ranked defense in the country as well. Auburn offense, Tennessee defense, good on good. I can't wait to see that battle. Then you have not bad units, but not as good. You've got the number 19 ranked defensive team in the country in Auburn, the number 23rd ranked offensive team in the country in Tennessee. So who's going to win that battle? I find that kind of interesting. You've got Tennessee that's ranked number 4 in the net rankings. Auburn that's number 1 in the net rankings. Again, I already mentioned the Associated Press poll. Tennessee's number 6 on the road at Auburn, number 1. Ken Palm, Auburn's number 2 behind Duke. And Tennessee is number 6 in the Ken Palm poll. Ken Palm projects Tennessee to lose this game 76-68, giving Tennessee a 23% chance of victory, which is not what you want to see. The ESPN matchup predictor over at ESPN.com and on the ESPN app gives Auburn a 74% chance of victory. So Ken Palm gives Tennessee a 23% chance of victory. The ESPN matchup predictor gives Tennessee a 26% chance of victory. You don't like those odds. FanDuel line at the time of this recording is not out yet, but Tennessee is obviously going to be an underdog. Auburn, already played 11 quad 1 games, 10-1. Again, the only loss being on the road at Cameron Indoor Stadium at Duke. 10-1 in quad 1 games for Auburn, 6-2 in quad 1 games for Tennessee. Of course, the 2 losses on the road at Florida and on the road at Vanderbilt as well. And then, of course, Tennessee is 11-0. Tennessee is 11-0 in quad 2 through 4 games, where Auburn is 7-0 in quad 2 through 4 games as well. Just looking up one thing just to double check, make sure that the win-loss total is correct. Yeah, okay, I got it. So that is what it looks like. A little preview of Tennessee and Auburn. It's an emotional game for Tennessee fans because of Bruce Pearl, obviously. There's been some really, really good matchups between Tennessee and Auburn over the years. Auburn's kind of had Tennessee's number at times as well, in March or in the SEC tournament. But I'm excited to see kind of what this is made of. There's been some really, really good matchups between these two teams here of late. In fact, I'm going to go look on the history tab over at UT Sports. Tennessee is almost more than double the amount of wins in this series between on the hardwood, 81-45. Longest streak was 11 games. That was way back when. We're not even going to give the dates there. But in the last 10 matchups, it's been a lot of Auburn, right? Tennessee's 3-7 in the last 10 matchups. However, Tennessee's won. Those 3 wins have been in the last 4 meetings. So from January the 2nd, 2018, all the way to February 27th, 2021, Auburn won 6 straight against the Volunteers. Tennessee snapped that streak with a home win in Knoxville in February of 2022. Beats Auburn again in February 2023 at home. Lost to Auburn on the road 79-70 last year in 2 years ago on the road, and then won in Knoxville last year as well in the month of February, 92-84. So that was to end. Was that to end? That was during that 6-game stretch to end the season where it was just brutal. Alabama, Auburn, I think Missouri was in there, so on and so forth. Nonetheless, Auburn has really dominated Tennessee in the last 10 matchups, but Tennessee's won 3 of the last 4. So it's going to be a good one. Will Broome play in this game? I doubt it. It's still going to be very, very challenging for Tennessee, even without Broome if he doesn't play. But we'll learn more about this matchup. We'll learn more about the Auburn Tigers, all that and more coming up on a crossover show, bonus show later today or early on a Saturday morning. Appreciate you guys, as always, for tuning in to Locked On Vols, making it your first listen, your first watch each and every single morning. Tell your friends, tell that Tennessee fan in your life that you can get Tennessee content every single morning when you wake up right here on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. Subscribe to the channels. It's how we grow, get in front of more and more Tennessee fans. Thank you so much. Appreciate you guys. Enjoy the weekend, everybody. This is Locked On Vols.